Good afternoon, Bobby Cappuccio.
Good afternoon, Jane Nichols.
Pleasure to see you. We've got a real treat for everyone today, haven't we? So
That
just to,
remains to be seen, but hang in there, we just might.
yeah, just to tease you in, I was thinking just this morning that I would like to be ultra successful, ultra wealthy. I'd like a new Evoque Range Rover, and I'd quite like to move house. And I thought that I would just ask the universe if they could guide me to getting what I
Ask the
want.
universe if they could throw in a few for me too.
Yeah, no, don't
Well,
worry. I was
right.
very generous in my request with all my friends. So there's your hint. What we're going to talk about today is self-help. Two types of self-help. Bobby, what are they?
Jane, first, before I get started, this is not a slam on all self-help. Although, if you think about the whole notion of going to a store to purchase something for self-help, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of it, doesn't it? But moving beyond that, a few of you will get that in a moment. Let's take a look at the self-help industry. There's a couple of things, and these aren't issues I have, they're just causes for pause. And there's two mantras or two paradigms that shape all of self-help. And on one extreme, it's everything that happens to me is my fault because I either attracted it to me or I failed to attract it to me. Poverty, the loss of a job, car accidents, illnesses are all the result of the thoughts that I'm thinking in my head. And the other extreme of self-help is nothing that ever happens to me in my life is ever my fault. And I think if you take a look at that, both of those are not reasonable. And both of those are a little bit exaggerated. And I think what we need sometimes is not so much positive thinking, not only with ourselves and with our clients, but we need empathy and critical thinking. And let me explain to you what I'm saying by that. In self-help, the main theme is success. Anytime you could walk into a bookstore and be assaulted by walls and walls of books on how to get more, have more, be more, do more, and how to succeed in life. And if you go on Facebook, there are these people who, if they're anything like a lot of the self-help authors I've met, some of them were living in their mom's basement, broke, always striving and never arriving, writing this book on success, and they didn't make any money until they started selling books, telling other people to do what it is they've never been able to do. And if you think about the word success, they always tell you to live life on your own terms and stop following the laws and rules of society, not the laws of society, but the rules of society that keep you broke. But then they seem to be okay with dictating exactly what success means. And it's always financial. So whenever somebody writes something or posts something on social media and says the 10 rules to being more successful, you know exactly what it means. They're talking about success in monetary terms. And I think, to kind of contradict myself, one of the best definitions I've ever heard of success comes from self-help guru Earl Nightingale. Success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile goal. And you have to ask, worthwhile to whom? And that comes to the point of nothing's worthwhile until it's intrinsically meaningful. And you can't accept somebody else's abolition of rules and dogmas if you accept the new ones that they're going to impose on you. And I think sometimes when you look at positive thinking, a lot of the things in the self-help world break down clinically, it breaks down empirically, and sometimes it breaks down anecdotally as well.
That's hilarious. I've been really trying not to laugh hard. So you mentioned Facebook, and I noticed lately that every time I go onto Facebook, and I'm also guilty of this because I always start my newsletter with what I'd like to term an inspirational quote. But every time I go onto Facebook lately, someone has got either a picture or a quote. More to the point, some people have even started making up their own quotes. on how the people who are their peers or in their friendship circle can be better. Does that mean that the person that puts the quote out feels that they are better and have more than the people they're trying to influence? Or, like you say, are those people just sitting, tinkering on Facebook, trying to create an image for themselves that they want other people to buy into?
You know, I think it could be all of the above. It could be none of the above. It could be one of the two things you just said. Question is not whether or not something's right or necessarily what's the motive of the other person, but is this useful to me? That's a really good point because we're in the behavioral change business. No change takes place. Nobody loses weight. Nobody changes the way they feel physically. Nobody changes anything about themselves cosmetically until they first change something about themselves behaviorally. And one of the first and preeminent rules of behavior change, Jane, is people do not do things for their reasons, for our reasons. They do it only for their own reasons. They don't do it because we motivated them or we gave them a compelling speech. They do it because intrinsically there's something magnetic about what they want that's pulling them towards it. And you're right, when you put up something and says, well, here's how you can be better, better than what?
Yeah,
better
exactly.
than what you already are? Who's to say that where you're at isn't good enough? The only person who can make that determination about my life is me. And what gives you the authority or the positioning to assume that you have something I want? Because people, based on the psychological law of reactance, when people push their ideas on them, we tend to push back. We have a very hard time, for a lot of reasons, taking advice. The only advice that we take is the advice that is the product of our own conclusions that we arrive at through the process of introspection. And that's something that people cannot get very often. And if you're a behavioral coach, it's not because you're inspiring that's going to help someone change. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be inspiring, you can't be a great example, but ultimately the person who's always in the driver's seat of change is the individual in front of you. It's never you. And if you want to be realistic about it, we're all broken, we're all messed up. None of us has got our shit together completely. Get on with it, get over it. I know so many people that work their whole lives about clearing up all the bad stuff that ever happened to them. And, oh no, when I was 6 years old, I wanted a biscuit. And my mom said no. And that no damaged me emotionally. And now whenever I hear no, I go to pieces. So I
eat a biscuit. I eat 15 biscuits.
You what?
Every time I hear the word no now, I eat a packet of biscuits.
Well, that's your mom's fault, Jane. She's done that to you. Every time you eat a packet of biscuits, you probably need to go buy a book, get some therapy, and talk to your mom about what a bad parent she was. And that is so ridiculous because, you know what? I think it's okay being a little bit screwed up. When it's not okay is when I decide that this is not useful for who I want to be and where I want to be, not when you, Jane, the guru, decide that it's not good enough where I am right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. But I think what you've said, when I add it up as well, we're almost in danger of. So sometimes when great things happen and you buy into the universe guiding you, or, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, if I see a magpie, I'm constantly on the alert for the second one. Should I run the risk of having bad luck for the next 24 hours?
Well, I was attacked by a couple of magpies in Australia.
2 together.
So that's very valid.
Was that 2 together?
Well, no, actually it was 1. But it was like 4 because it kept circling about. I don't know about the 2 magpie thing, but magpies are dangerous. Avoid them at all costs.
The funny thing about a magpie as well is it's such a beautiful, beautiful bird, but such an unpleasant nature. They really are.
I've dated a few people like that.
Yeah, let's not even start. So yeah, let's go back to when we do believe in these kind of things, we're almost in danger of missing what we do create ourselves and patting ourselves on the back and becoming to trust our own judgment in creating the good things that happen. You know, so if I say the universe guided me, or I've been lucky, or my chakras are all right, or something's in the right place, the energy flows are all working for me, I'm almost overriding the fact that I have made positive change and I have stopped associating the word no with chocolate-backed wholemeal, you know?
Well, let me contradict myself for a second.
Oh, God, no.
My personal belief, which is nothing more than a conviction or thought process that I execute, that I use to navigate through my life, is that people have the right to believe whatever it is they want to believe. And they shouldn't be mocked for it. I think we're in a society right now where if somebody believes something, and if I consider myself having a scientific mind, and that belief system isn't scientific, well, you must be an idiot. No, that's non-empathetic, and that's just as bad as anybody else persecuting anyone for their belief system. So if you wanted to believe that the way to lose weight is to ask Santa Claus for a magical weight loss remedy, go on. Now, personally, I wouldn't trust Santa Claus with weight loss remedies because he's not done a very good job with his own body.
Himself.
But beyond that, you have every right to believe that. What I take issue with is when in our industry, we bring solutions that are supposed to be somewhat evidence-based to other people as absolute fact. Or when we mic it up in front of a room and talk about the way to behavioral change, life change, not only for us, because that's all right, but for our clients, lies with something ethereal and something that can't be tested. And if it can't be tested, it can't be measured. And if it can't be tested and measured, it cannot be reproduced. And if it cannot be reproduced, why are we discussing this in front of a room as a valid methodology? So people talk about, electromagnetic resonance, how it goes out into the universe and how it connects with electromagnetic fields of energy that are in congruence with what it is we're thinking or what we want, and it attracts those things to us. Now, if you read Ken Wilber's book, Quantum Questions, he takes a look at the work of really prominent quantum theorists, people like Einstein, Bohm, Schroeder, and he takes a look at all of these people and their work to find where's the evidence to support this. And to tell you the truth, there is none. And that doesn't mean that these things are not real. I don't know. Maybe you could, like a magnet, attract things that you want to. But there's no evidence in quantum theory to support this, first of all. Another thing is string theory. Now, string theory is big, to put it simply, because I don't understand quantum physics. And I think a lot of people who write books on quantum physics who are not quantum theorists don't understand quantum physics or quantum mechanics, because to understand quantum mechanics, you need to understand math. And I don't mean like, oh yeah, you know what, I got pretty good grades in math. No, I mean like Goodwill Hunting level smart in mathematics. You're going to be at that freaky level to understand what you're talking about. But from some pop quantum mechanics, here's string theory. You've got two theories that kind of explain how the universe functions. You've got relativity, which explains how distortions in space and time affect things like gravity and act on massive objects like the sun and the earth, or us for that matter. And then you have quantum mechanics that explain how subatomic particles behave, things like protons, neutrons, and their orbiting electrons. And string theory attempts to act as a unification theory, to have one overriding theory to explain all things in the universe, and it is centered around little tiny circular strings of energy and their level of vibration and how that controls the laws governing the universe. Now, the problem with that is, and the things that quantum theorists are struggling with, again, those particles, if they exist, are too small to test. So there's no proof whatsoever that they exist. It is a theory. Yet people are writing books on how this theory that's untestable, unprovable to the smartest quantum theorist in the world absolutely govern your life and determine what you have or what you fail to have. That's the whatever happens to you in your life is your fault camp. And I think it's grossly irresponsible because there are things where certain dogmas that are stated over and over and over again, kind of like auto-suggestion, say something ridiculous enough with emphatic intent enough times to enough people, and it becomes truth. And the more outrageous it is, the more compelling it becomes because people think, wow, you couldn't possibly make this crap up. There's things in self-help that are being stated as fact that do not bear themselves out. For example, you have to eradicate negative thinking from your mind because thoughts are things, and whatever you think determines what you attract to. It determines your behaviors.
That's the big one.
There's a couple of problems with that, Jane. The first problem, I love what Tony Robbins says. Tony Robbins is one of these people in the self-help world that I think is doing some amazing stuff because he takes some pretty complex subject matter and breaks it down simplistically into systematic application. Here's 3 questions you need to ask yourself. Here's a 4-step process. I happen to like that stuff. But I love what he says. The problem with thinking positive is you have to think about it. Now, if you think about the thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts you have during the day, you have this stream of consciousness running through your head. Jane, in the past 60 seconds, tell me 2 specific thoughts that you've had.
That quantum physics bears no relationship to what we do in fitness, although you're on a roll now. And the other thought is, I wonder if Pippin Troll's hungry.
Okay. 2 also completely unrelated thoughts. If I asked you what are 5 thoughts you've had, 10 thoughts you've had, you probably could not tell me. But you've had more than 10 thoughts. Your mind's just been going round in circles, and you've been having this stream of consciousness. So we're not aware of 95% of the things we're thinking about, yet we have to control the things that we're unaware of. And if you take a look at it, here's something really cool. Robert Cloninger of the University of Washington, as well as Dr. Salto and Associates, did some research on positive thinking and its relation to obesity. Now, the presupposition was positive thinking people would have an easier time with weight loss than people who are pessimists, people who are negative thinkers. They found just the opposite. They found people who are more pessimistic did better on their weight loss program, short-term and long-term, than positive thinking people because negative thinking people seem to magnify the consequences of not sticking to their diet when positive thinking people only imagine positive outcomes for them.
Yeah.
So
my husband's going to leave me if I'm...
What?
My husband's going to leave me if I don't lose weight.
Yeah, because nobody wants to be married to a fat person. And then I read research that the greater levels of obesity you have, the more dysfunctional your brain chemistry is, and you start to atrophy the hippocampus and the prefrontal lobes. Oh my God, I'm going to be fat and stupid. And, at my job, they're laying people off left and right. They can't afford to keep a dumb person on the payroll, so I'm going to be fat, stupid, and broke. And nothing's worse than being fat, stupid, and broke. Or as the late, great Jim Rohn used to put, nothing's worse than being fat, stupid, and broke, unless, of course, you're ugly. So then you're really screwed. So I better stick to this program where the positive thinking people, the people who are more optimistic, say, you know what, if I fall off today, I'll just get back on tomorrow, which is pretty healthy in and of itself. But the people who were pessimists did do very well as a result of the pessimism. So it's not like positive thinking is an end-all, be-all.
No, quite.
Another thing this was published in Scientific American Mind about a year ago was positive affirmations. I will lose weight. I will work harder and smarter in my business. Well, they took 2 groups of people, two groups of experiments actually. one for business-related skills, and the other one was for weight loss, right? Two things that people are really trying to work towards in their life. I want to be wealthier and thinner. And then they broke these groups up into three groups. So they had the positive thinking people, the people who were making positive affirmations. Then they had the group that they were told, don't do anything different than what you always did. All right, so no affirmations, you're not going to do anti-affirmations. They were the control group. And then you had people who they were told to reverse the affirmation. So it wasn't so much of a positive statement like we're told to make. It was more of a question. Instead of, I will make better food choices, I will lose, 2 kilos, it was, will I lose 2 kilos? Will I make better food choices? And here's what's amazing. The people who did the control group, at the end of the experiment, they didn't do better, they didn't do worse, kind of like expected. The people who did the worst were the positive affirmation group. The people who said something positive, something personal, affirmative related to their goal, I will, I am, they did horrible. The people who did a lot better was the will I group. Now let's first take a look at why the positive affirmation group didn't do well. In a post-experiment interview, they were asked, well, what happened? And they said, well, I know I've never stuck to a program in the past. So when I said, I will, I had this little voice inside my head going, no, you won't.
No, you won't.
You're kind of lazy and, you really like your pudding, so you're probably going to fail again. And now I'm doing it on an experiment, so I'm going to fail in front of you. You're a professional. I was afraid I'd get judged and you'd be disappointed in me as the experimenter. I told my family I was involved in this experiment. I didn't want them to go, oh, God, even with clinical and intervention, you still can't sort yourself out. That's humiliating. But with the will I, it was open-ended. So I've not committed to anything. So social rejection, condemnation, embarrassment, the fear of failure was not so magnified, Jane. And what else is really powerful, when you say will I, you put space between stimulus and response. See, when you're afraid and when you're feeling anxious or when you're feeling angry at yourself because you said you were going to do something and you failed to do it and you're a failure, your amygdala, the part of your brain that if you took a laser light and bisected your left eye and your left ear, the place at which those two laser points came together would be a little tiny structure in your brain that regulates emotions like fear and anger. And when that's really active, the internal police officer in your brain, the part of your brain that reasons, the part of your brain that says, oh, you know what, I really want this biscuit, but you know what, long term, that's not in my best interest. I better make a different decision. That part of your brain is down-regulated. So when you have all this emotion around something, emotions like anger and fear, you're not, the part of your brain that makes better decisions isn't even really active. So it's really hard on yourself to go, oh, I wasn't disciplined. No, maybe you were just too emotional because of, so they tell you, be disciplined, be positive, be affirmative, and then they give you these resolute affirmations that gives you no way out, that makes you so anxious about failure and creates an emotional state that shuts down the part of your brain that you need to be disciplined in the first place. So I think what we need is more of an understanding of how the brain works, how behavior change really occurs, and we need a bit more empathy. People don't fail to change because they're fat, or lazy, and they're undisciplined. People fail to change because they either A, haven't identified what it is about change that's so compelling for them. They don't have a big enough why, or they don't have the right strategy. Right. And that's not something where you need to throw someone under the bus. And I think not all self-help, or a lot of self-help, makes you feel guilty because you're not using their proven methodologies, which aren't really proven.
Yeah.
And that somebody into the loop of, I got to try harder, stop thinking negative thoughts, stop thinking negative thoughts. But if you read 59 Seconds, written by Dr. Richard Weissman, he cites multiple research where the more you think about something, and he uses the example of Dostoevsky's White Bear. The more you think about the big white, or try not to think about the big white fierce polar bear, the more the beast is dominant in your mind's thoughts. So by trying not to think about something, you make it the preeminent focus of your brain. So when you keep going down the path of the thing that you're trying not to think about, negativity. I love when people go, I don't associate with negative thinkers. No negativity. Stop a lunatic. Stop it. First, acknowledge the fact that you're having a negative thought. Because you know what? If you didn't have negative thoughts like anger and fear and worry, you'd be dead. Because these emotions keep us alive. They're not negative. They're simply emotions. Stop labeling people. Oh, I don't deal with negative clients. How does that make them feel? So your facial expressions, your body language sends the message, I don't accept your behavior. I don't accept you. Get over yourself. It ain't about you in the first place, mate. So don't label people as positive people good, negative people bad. Stop and say, right, if my clients have a negative thought, or I'm having a negative thought, quote unquote, why am I having this thought? What was my trigger? And how would I rather be feeling if I don't want to be? Sometimes we want to be feeling angry because it's justified. But if I don't want to be feeling that, how would I rather be feeling? And let's start to look for some strategies. If that anger stops us from doing things that serve us, support us, or in correspondence with what it is we want to be, have, and do, and find alternate strategies that kind of are more in alignment. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'd say that 70%, as usual, of what you've said makes sense. And then the other 30% gives me a lot to think about, which is why we're doing this. So, no, it's a brilliant, brilliant topic. And I have personally been listening on my audio CDs to a lot of Jim Rohn lately. And I love him. And it's just so we're not negating self-help in a way, although I don't know whether you'd class that as motivational speaking or self-help. But
no, we're not negating self-help. It's these absolute ludicrous, sensationalized paradigms about, right, I'm going to teach you how to attract everything to you just by thinking happy thoughts. And if you didn't get what you wanted, it's because you let negative thoughts slip into your head. What? Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Really?
It's such a valid topic. It is such a valid topic with, again, how we put pressure on ourselves and the people around us, really, without any level of background, as you said in the beginning, or evidence other than the fact that being negative is negative and being positive gets result.
Well, sometimes we play the I'm good, you're bad game with people.
Yeah.
And if I don't tolerate your negative thinking, it must be because I'm not that type of a person. Like if you tell someone, oh, do you want to go have a drink? And they don't go, well, I'm not really in the mood for a drink. They say, no, I'm not a drinker. So there's a connotation there. There's a judgment there. So very subtle. And I don't care whether somebody drinks or they don't drink, unless they have a really bad personality, and maybe they should consider drinking a bit more. But other than that, I mean, if you say to your client, I don't tolerate negative thinking, that means you're negative or you're being negative, and that's not the person I am because I'm positive. In other words, me good, you bad. And that's not a relationship that creates enough safety, because you look at Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. After our physiological needs are met, our most basic needs are to feel safe, physically and emotionally, and you're not creating the level of safety where someone can communicate with you openly and honestly. So now they have to self-edit what's acceptable to you as the trainer rather than what's acceptable to them as the client, as the person who's trying to make these changes. So it becomes all about our preferences and the rules that we set up that they need to adhere to, rather than allowing them to set up their own rules that they want to
Right.
adhere to.
Yeah. That's brilliant. So we're going to close it there. Thank you once again for your wonderful insight. And
Thank you, Jen.
we'll see you again next Friday for more
I hope so.
similar. Take care.
Bye.